Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Seth.
And this is Never TMI,
where we talk about real things.
And nothing is ever off limits.
All right, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to have a little... What?
Nothing.
All
Hello.
right, today we're going to have a little chit-chat about the love languages, right?
Yes. Which I'm pretty sure everybody knows what they are, but if not, we'll just briefly touch on them.
Let me give this its due respect as well. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages, and the author is... Do you know the author off the top of your head?
Oh, no.
Author is Gary Chapman.
Okay.
Old Gary.
Yeah, he did a great job with that one. That one. Well, I'm serious. I don't know him as an author, but I know,
do you know
it helped us a lot. No.
Okay. Well, anyways, so 5 love languages.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go? Can you tell me
what?
off the top of your head?
We've got gifts. Hello.
Receiving gifts. So not giving gifts, but receiving.
Okay. Well, we haven't gotten into all that. There's like love languages, like receiving, and love languages that like on the other end, right? Or is there not? Maybe in the book it goes into it, but yeah, giving gifts or receiving gifts. Sorry, receiving gifts is one. So this is like how you receive love. 5 love languages for you. So how you receive them.
Receiving gifts, quality time.
Like you feel most loved when you get quality time with someone.
Acts of service.
Words of affirmation. And we've got physical touch.
Physical touch, baby.
Yes. So this book, it's been around for a little while.
If you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend reading it.
Highly recommend.
It's really I would say it's a fundamental piece of our, like the way that we approach
relationship,
receiving love, and
yes,
like how we interact to. I think the image that helps me the most is like envisioning these buckets. Like each person has
all 5 buckets. Yes.
And so like you receive love in each of these different ways, but one person's going to have a bigger bucket to fill for physical touch than maybe your partner whose primary love language is acts of service or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So each one of these buckets has to get filled, but the amount of filling for them is going to be different depending on the person. Like
you have a main one and then one at the bottom that you just kind of don't care for. And we'll tell you ours just because it was really funny. When we first, I think we listened to the CD actually in the car when we lived in California. But it was like literally life-changing, and we'd heard so much about it. But it genuinely has helped our marriage so much. So, and then there's one for kids. There's ones for...
Oh, not.
Yeah, just like different relationships. Kind of like the Enneagram, how it's like, understanding your kid's personality, understanding your spouse's personality. Like, it goes into it. So for the 5 love languages, it's a pretty extensive book, but it's such an easy read or easy listen because it's so interesting. And you're like thinking about yours and thinking about your partners and how they go together. And so when we first listened to it, it was really funny because ours ended up being the complete opposite. And we're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so Seth's number 1, and I don't really know the order like in between. I just remember we have the opposite, number 1 and number 5. So yours is acts of service is number 1. And that was my number 5, like not a priority. And for him, it's everything. And then words of affirmation was number 1 for me.
And my last.
And his last, like whatever. So it just made so much sense. Even being aware, like take away the tools and all that kind of stuff. It was like even knowing that he will feel most loved when I'm like and not even necessarily like serving him, but like doing thing. Well, it indirectly does serve him, but like if I just like think essentially outside of the box, because again, that's my number 5. So like naturally I'm not thinking about the things that need to be done that would like make him happy. So like I'm more like, oh, let me just tell you how much I love you and how wonderful you are and how special you are. But like, and that's important, but it's not going to go super far as, you know, if I were to like clean up the entire house and do the laundry and do the dishes, and so he doesn't have to do the dishes, or like thinking of him in those other ways, it's like, oh my gosh, he's going to feel more loved than he would, even though for me, acts of service, it's like you can do all that, but like at the end of the day, all I want you to do is just tell me how much you love me. Just like tell me why. And even sometimes when he's like, I love you so much, I'm like, why? Like what about it? It's just like that fills my cup, you know?
And I think you said it, but it's natural that we like to give love the way that we receive love, because that's what's most familiar to us.
Totally.
So like for me, it's so easy to display acts of service to Jackie, because that's like how I think in terms of love language. That's my number 1. So I'm constantly cleaning up, putting things away, doing the dishes, like whatever little house chores I can think of. That's like a no-brainer to me. But it took me a long time. Actually, I forget who it was. We were in the car though. I think I remember now. I'm not gonna say names to. Do you remember this conversation?
Well, I have no idea.
We were coming back from this church service. We had a girl come stay with us.
Oh my gosh, I remember.
You do?
I sure do.
And we were coming back, and we were talking about this topic from, I think somehow it was brought up in church. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know that I really believe in the whole 5 love languages. And I hadn't done my research on it or read it, whatever. And it was just like, I just felt like you just kind of know what you know, and you figure it out and make it work. And I was so ignorant. But Jackie and this other girl, when I said that, they both just flipped on me. And I was like,
okay, you act like we yelled at you or something.
You didn't yell at me, but it was just
we
like,
were just passionate about it.
Very passionate. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Because it's so important. It's so helpful. It is.
And then I read the book, and then I started putting it into practice, and I can really, like, I could really see the benefit and the fruit of it after doing it. And I think that was the thing I was most surprised about, though, is it was a lot more work than I anticipated. Because, again, for me, acts of service comes so naturally. Words of affirmation, my way of doing words of affirmation for Jackie is I have to write her a note or a card, because it takes that much intentionality for me to like actually come up with words to like to where I don't feel like I'm just talking out of my butt and be like, oh, you're so pretty and all this other like fluff stuff. It's like, if I really need to be intentional with it, I'm going to have to sit down and like think it out and write it out. Yeah. And that's how I am even with like cards, any card. Cards.
When I first met him, I was like, I mean, before he would call someone, he would literally plan out a voicemail just in case they didn't answer the phone. And I was like, bro, this is too much. But like, that is how he operates. That's how he works. So like for me, I'm like,
I used to, not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
With cards though, I'll still write out the card before I write it in pen, because I just feel like.
And I'm so like, let it flow to me, like whatever. And still, like he'll be like,
people out there in school, shout out, right?
Oh, sorry.
Just the amount of times I needed an eraser, I'd have to write in pencil. If I write in pen, I'm either crossing something out or. That's funny. Why. That's another main reason why I write out my letters before I write them in pen.
Yeah. No, and that's just an example of like how easy it comes for me, where it's my number 1. Yeah. I'm just I could never. I'm like, what am I feeling in the moment? How can I build this person up and make them feel special and stuff like that? And so I think there was a huge disconnect for us just because, you know, I could come to Seth and be like, I just don't feel loved. And he'd be like, what? Like, I'm doing so much for you. Like, I'm doing all these things. Like, how in the world can you not see? And even having kids and all that kind of stuff, like, he's so hands-on. He's so helpful. He's so, like, servant-hearted, which I love about him. And I do appreciate, like, I'm sure I take it for granted sometimes, but I really do try not to, because he is so, like, I'm so thankful for the way that he is. I think it also helps you to, like, appreciate, you know, knowing that's how he loves. I'm like, oh, he is loving me. Like, that's just the way that he operates. So I'm way less like, you know, my go-to isn't like, I don't feel loved. It's like, I would love my buckets to be filled a little bit more. And same with him. It's like, if he were like, oh, Jackie, like, do you love me? Like, and I'm like, of course I do, but I could just be telling him and all that kind of stuff, but it's like, I'm not, what have I done? What things have I done for him that are, like, not supernatural to me, you know, whatever. And an example, it's funny because I remember, like, anything he says about me, like, physically, like, if he were like, I would think it would be so cool and beautiful if you shaved half of your head, I would literally do it in a heartbeat, because I'm like, whatever you say, whatever you want, whatever you think, it's at the top of my list. Like, I want to, you know, that affirming the words, like, anything he says about me, I'm like, oh, okay. If I were to say that to him, he, like, it just way less. I'm like, doesn't it matter that I'm telling you, like, I love, you know, whatever, your hair, your beard, this way, your whatever. But it's just like, not that much. And I'll never forget, I straight up asked him one time, I was like, isn't it enough that I'm telling you, like, I love this? And he was like, not really, you know? And it was like, okay. So it's really been helpful for, like, just the way we operate. And even still to this day, like, I have to be mindful. Like, I don't make the bed for me. I make it for him. 1,000,000% when I do make the bed. Like, I don't clean the bathroom. Anything I do is, like, with him in mind, because it just does not come naturally to me. I'm not thinking about it, but because I love him, it makes me really happy knowing, like, oh, he's going to appreciate this. He's going to feel loved. He's going to feel thankful. So, like, let me do this. And that's, like, the love in action part of it, where it's like, yeah, I don't really, you know, I'm not one of those people that's like, I need to make the bed in order to feel good in the morning. Like, no, it does feel good, but.
That's so interesting that you said that, though, because I'm thinking about, like, you just said, the things that I don't do it thinking, or I do it thinking about you. Mm-hmm. So you're not really thinking about it for yourself. Whereas I'm the opposite. The things that I do, I'm thinking about doing it for a purpose, but the things that I say, are more
for me.
Excuse me, are more happenstance, or it's just like less thought out. It's just like a reaction as opposed to, like, a response. And so I don't know. It's like, I've never thought of it that we're living life differently from those viewpoints. And totally. it would be really beneficial for me to start also, like, living with the same purpose that I put into the activities that I do. Yeah. Putting the same purpose into the things that I'm saying. And I mean, there's so many biblical contexts of the power of your words and the importance of you know, doing, like, what you speak and being a man or a woman of your word. And I think that's sometimes why I can undervalue words of affirmation, because so many people say stuff that they don't follow through with. But it's just, I've never thought of that like, life perspective, the way that you go about life. You're more focused on, like, the things that you say and the way that makes people feel. Where I'm more focused on the things that I do and the way that makes people feel. And this is,
and it
like,
comes so much easier. And
it does, but I'm also reminded, like, this is exactly why we're having this podcast, because I feel like everything we talk about, again, we're trying to be real with it, and it's real time. Like, we're in the middle of it's like helpful for us, or it's something that we need to work through.
Yeah.
Like, this is therapy for us in itself. And so, like, I'm just reminded again of the importance of love language, but it's not, it's just it's such a deeper, like a deeper thing that when you actually put it in practice, I really think that you're going to start to see the fruit
you
of it.
You totally do.
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
But it's just like, even talking about it right now, it's like, wow, I'm realizing I don't do these things. Like, as much as I know Jackie's number one love language is words of affirmation, I still struggle with it just as, almost just as much as when I first started, like, learning about it. And it's just a constant reminder that for Jackie to feel fully loved, I really have to prioritize words of affirmation, and the other stuff.
Yeah,
but that one specifically has to get the most attention of all of them.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like in society today, there's so many, like, it's so, everybody's like, oh, my love language is flowers and coffee, and my love language is like trips and all that kind of stuff. But when you think about it, there's like still a root to those things. So, like, for me, I've even said it before, I'm sure, like, my love language is like coffee. Just, I love coffee so much. And if he gets me a coffee, it's like, but at the end of the day, that's acts of service or, gifts or whatever. It's like, you're thinking of me. Or especially when there's like a little Post-it note on it, like sometimes in the morning, he'll bring me coffee and like roll up a little note. And it's just like, oh, like, literally, I love it more than anything. And so there's a root to, like, and it's interesting to really figure out, like, what your love language is. And then many things make sense too. Yeah.
There's a quiz, right? Am I making that?
Yes.
Okay.
There is kind of like a personality quiz. Like, you can just do it online for free.
That would be another good way to do like a litmus test for it, is if you were voided one of those things, which would be most impactful to you, or like which would you recognize first as lacking? So like physical touch, like if you didn't receive physical touch for a long period of time, how would that affect you compared to acts of service, words of affirmation, and thinking of it from that point of view. But there's definitely a test online. Yeah. So.
And they all will affect you at some, like, even acts of service, even though it's my last one, like, I eventually, like, if he never served in any kind of way like that, then I would notice it and all that kind of stuff. So it's not to say that there's one that's just completely pointless, because they all matter. And he kind of goes into it in the book, but it does make sense. But it is just where the, like, work portion, there's so many ways that like the work portion of the commitment comes in. But this is just one of them. It's like, okay, I have to keep in mind his love language. Like, I have to keep it in mind in order to love him well, in order to be, a decent spouse, in order to be doing well, like, in order for it to be healthy. Like, I do have to consider the way that he receives love, because I can love him all day long in my ways and think I'm doing a good job. But, like, and there's been many times that we've had conversations where, like, it's like, what can I do better? What can I, what am I doing well and what can I do better? And sometimes it's shocking, because you're like, okay, well, I thought I was doing a really good job, but, like, you're empty over here. And if you don't have those conversations, if you don't keep in mind, like, okay, it does take work and it does take intentionality and effort, that, like, you can't just, like, live every day and just hope they're feeling loved. It's like, no, it takes a lot of work. So the love language is really, it helps to kind of be able to mentally check off, like, okay, am I doing well in this area? Like, or my bathroom, for example, it'll be messy, and like we have separate sinks. And it's funny. It's not funny, I'm sure. Sometimes I will use his sink because mine gets so messy, and then it just defeats the purpose of having two different sinks. But even still, like keeping a clean, like atmosphere, sometimes it'll be, 4 days before I've even like cleared off my countertop. And in my mind, it's like, I literally could leave this for another month. I just don't care. It doesn't bother me. It's way easier for me to just have the things that I use every day out. But like, this is going to bother Seth. Not even like, oh, he'll feel so loved if I put this away. It's like, this is also like affecting him if I just leave this here. So that is the part where it's like, okay, relationships, they have to be selfless, and it's not all about you. And I can't sit and be like, but I've written you so many letters and I've told you how much I love you. It's like, if that's not it, if that's not cutting it for your spouse or your partner, whatever, like you got to switch things up, and that's just love. It is what it is,
Hey guys, just want to take a quick second here to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth is a company that produces bedding, towels, loungewear, pajamas. I personally have been wearing their men's pajamas now for over the past month, and I gotta say that they are my new favorite set of PJs. Very comfortable. I love how it's a t-shirt and pants. They're fitted, not too fitted, but breathable, and I just feel right wearing a matching set of PJs around the house.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely amazing. They're made from the softest viscose from bamboo. It literally feels like a heavenly, breathable, kind of like thin, I don't know, it's magical. Feels incredible. Side note, for Mother's Day would be the absolute perfect gift. I personally love wearing actual pajamas. Like I used to wear a t-shirt to bed, and I feel like, yeah, there's just something about a matching set. So
it's an elevated game.
Yes, we have a wonderful code for you guys. It's 35% off using code NEVERTMI. So definitely take advantage. Their bedding is incredibly soft. Again, the loungewear, the PJs, they have so many different styles for men and women. So definitely jump on that. Code is 35% off. NEVERTMI. Happy shopping.
Yeah. And obviously those are like very broad topics, but to be successful or for it to work for you in your relationship, you really have to learn the personal, like buttons, like what presses Jackie's buttons.
Yeah.
Because words of affirmation, I could talk about how beautiful she is all the time, and that might not like fill her bucket, but like maybe talking about her as a mother, or like her as a woman, or in her business life, or like whatever it is. And this is an example.
No, yeah, absolutely.
But like I could think that I'm doing one thing and trying to do it well, even like acts of service. I could think that I'm serving, if acts of service was Jackie's number one, and this is the easiest for me to just use an example. If Jackie's number one love language was acts of service, and I think that cleaning the house for her is that just turns her on. But in reality,
which is unfortunately, I feel like acts of service, I'm like, clean, just clean, keep it clean, and he'll be happy.
But acts of service could be making dinner, or like, I don't know, doing other things other than just like,
give me some more examples here. Making dinner, or what else? Do you think?
This is just an example. I'm not saying it is for me, but like, even within each category, there's so many different aspects of that category that I don't know.
Or thinking of like washing the car, getting the car washed, or checking something off of his list that you might have, like he might have on his list. And I remember I like had taken one thing and put it on my list that was on his list. So I was like, he's clearly overwhelmed with like the amount of things he has to do. And it was nothing for me. It wasn't like whatever. It was just like, I'm sure this would be helpful if I did this. So let me write this down and see if I can do it for him. And I remember he pointed it out and was like, wait, why do you have that on your list? Oh my gosh. Okay. That, like, whatever. It did something for him.
Because I feel like and I know this from personal experience, it's like when I do the same things for you over and over,
it gets old. Or it gets underappreciated.
It gets underappreciated. Yeah. It's like if I know that you love coffee and a note, and I'm bringing you a coffee and a note, coffee and a note every day. Well,
it's also because I know you, and you're such a checklist person,
right?
So like he'll have an alarm, and it's like, and that bring Jackie coffee and write her a note, and I'm like, okay, what? Like it makes a difference when, because I'm positive if I were just to like keep the bathroom clean after 2 weeks, you'd be like, good for you, awesome, this is great, but like, is there anything else? So like it does, like the unique thing, it and again, that's where it takes work, because it's like I'm not thinking of getting the car washed or something. I'm not thinking of knocking something off of his list or making dinner extra special or like whatever. Like if there's anything I can do for him that just would make his life easier and all, it's just like a constant lifelong thing. But you got to get creative with it. Just like for him. Yeah. If he was just strictly saying, I love you so much more than anything. You are the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me every single day. It's like, that's great. Yeah. It just dampens it a little bit. And not that is ever a not good thing, but it's like, okay, what sets me apart? Like tell me, like fill a different category within words of affirmation. Like instead of writing me a note, maybe just call me or whatever. Like even I was in Florida this past weekend, for my cousin's, bridal shower. Yes. Bridal shower. And like we got, so Seth and I just essentially was texting. We were texting, and like something about texting is just so special because I don't know, to me, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm just like, I love it. I love the different aspect of communication and words, and like how, obviously if we're in person, we're not going to be like, man, I just miss you so much. Oh, I love you. You're just so whatever. And I'm whatever. So texting, it's like,
it's a different array of
it's a different communication. And it just was like, oh my gosh, it just like brought me back to when we were long distance and we're just affirming each other. And I just felt like giddy and in love and all that kind of stuff. And you almost come home on this high of like communication, and you're like, okay, this is real life. We don't really communicate like this in real life. Obviously that would be odd. So it's funny because I could tell, I was like, oh, these are filling some buckets here for sure. So it's funny, but
oh wait,
no, go ahead.
Oh, I thought
I was gonna jump into the challenge that we have for you guys, but you can go ahead.
That's where I was going. So, I guess part of the reason we had this as our topic today, I just recently did a marriage boot camp through a church that was for men, and it was just kind of like a reminder / pump up. No, it wasn't a pump up. It was more like a reminder and like teaching on like the importance of marriage, what is marriage, stuff like that. And each week, well, most weeks there was always a homework assignment, and one of the homeworks was to schedule, like to write out in a schedule, and this was primarily towards words of affirmation, like affirming your wife. And the homework was to create a schedule where you're affirming your wife of different things that she would want to be affirmed about, and sticking to that, and then seeing like what played out in that. And so secretly I've kind of done this. I didn't actually make a schedule with it per se, even though I had some, like an idea of it in my mind ever since coming back from Florida, as just like, and just, I know we talked about that on the last podcast, but and just like the efforts of kind of like I don't know, coming back from a guy's trip, being reminded like, okay, like I need to continue to put work into this relationship.
I'm a husband.
Yeah, just like
I have children.
reminder
Yeah.
that you need to continue to put work into your relationship.
Yeah.
It was like a great exercise to start doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy to see the effects of it. And I know there's been other things in between.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we personally have been in a much better space than we normally are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just like little things that you can tell, like conflict.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of those indicators, like, are you guys fighting as much?
Yeah.
If you are fighting, this is the biggest thing for me.
Recovery
if we
time.
do fight, what is our recovery time? And I feel like
Totally.
our recovery time has been way better.
Way quicker.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when your recovery time
I'm
isn't
glad you
good,
said that.
it's because I know.
You do know though, and
it means a lot if I can like let something go and if we can like move on. Because that Seth would love to pretend like nothing has ever happened ever, and
but I know that it has, and it's just like
yeah.
That's when you just got to walk through it.
You just want to move on.
I can tell that is by far hands down
Yeah.
the biggest indicator where it's like I know that I'm trying to do these things more.
Yeah.
And that is for me the fruit that I need or the affirmation that I need that this is working.
Well, I think too, sorry,
No,
the
go
last
ahead,
point on the recovery time, when the recovery time isn't short and when I'm like not, when we are like not as easily able to like let things go, there's usually like a way deeper issue because it's like, this is just building on something that's already frustrating and difficult, and I'm so over this, and it's not like the little issue at hand. Like even last night there was something so small and dumb and it was frustrating, but that was the only thing. It's like there wasn't like a pile, it wasn't on a pile of like, man, I can't stand you and you're so frustrating lately and you don't love me and you're not being this and you're not doing that. It was like, nope, it was just that one isolated issue. And when that's the case, we're able to just like, great, okay, I love you, move on.
Move on. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, so that is in a sense, in essence.
Either word.
Well, I guess to wrap up the podcast, I would say there's 3 things that we would challenge you with. 1, if you haven't read the 5 Love Languages book,
yes,
read it.
Yeah, for sure.
If you haven't taken it, if you've read it, or even if you haven't taken the test, go take the test. I think we took
even
the
if you're
test
single,
first.
like do it so you know.
Go take the test. I would highly recommend reading the book, especially if you're, as a couple
or listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. When I say
I just want to emphasize because when people say read, I forget that I can listen to a book and that just changes everything. So
see, when I say read, I am 99.9% talking about
Audible.
So
praise the Lord.
Read the book if you haven't. Even do it as a group couples thing. That's always kind of a good way to just spend quality time with each other.
Yeah.
So do that. The next challenge would be pick. Well, I would say starting with words of affirmation, or you can pick one thing that like your spouse's number 1 love language. Let's do that. Pick your spouse's number 1 love language and set a schedule. And this is where I know we talked about like things can get monotonous. This is where I think a schedule can help and it can also hurt you.
Yeah.
In both ways.
It can help create a foundation.
Yes, it can help you build
Habits.
the habit.
Yeah.
But it can hurt you in the sense that if you continue to do those exact same habits over and over, it'll get monotonous.
Like use it as a guideline. Get you in the zone for it, but don't like stick to it for the rest of your life,
But the other benefit to planning though is then if you can, and I found this for me, if I plan it out, I can actually then be more intentional with like changing it up and making sure that I'm adding variety as opposed to just the same coffee flour, or what do we say, coffee note every day, like
or flour, yeah.
So I would do that. So pick your spouse's number 1 love language and create a schedule to intentionally sow that seed to your spouse. And to do it consistently. I think that's the key. the third challenge, and this is something that we've recently been talking about, knowing that each person has all 5 love languages and that those are buckets to be filled. What if we could sow a seed to each bucket to your spouse on a daily basis? Like, I think that's the point I would like to get to in our relationship is, and again, this is all about like building the habit, but I think so often in today's culture, we're focused on hustle and bustle. I'm out here grinding. I got to go get it done.
Yeah.
Like work, money, status, like all these other things. And something that we're realizing as we get older, the importance of relationship and just understanding the priority of our relationship and where it fits in our life. And so like I know in my mind, I'm always thinking about, where's the money coming from this week? Or what do I need to do for work? Like that is those are consuming thoughts in my mind. Not how am I loving Jackie? Am I meeting her needs? Am I filling her love cups? So like to really,
because that's the priority.
We firmly believe that, for us, our priorities go God, spouse, children, and, I would say even health, physical health,
work.
And then work comes after that stuff. And so I think I've been challenged recently with, am I living out my priorities in my daily life? And I definitely don't most of the time.
I think you do. You're doing a great job, and you work on it. That's all that matters.
To train myself to prioritize my wife more. This is what I've come up with to try to do this, so that I build that habit of, okay, I'm more consistently thinking about my wife. Am I loving her well? Am I filling her love tanks? And because there's also, there's balance to everything, and it's not that she has to be, even though she's my number 2 priority, that doesn't mean that she needs, the vast majority of my time in a day. But it's the time that I'm putting into her. Is it valuable, and is it filling your love?
Yeah.
tank?
Is this how it is? Yeah. And I think that even for me, like, am I elevating our children above him? Do they feel more loved and served and taken care of and tended to than he does? If so, that's a problem. Like, I can love my kids so well while not elevating them above Seth or the Lord or my job. Like, okay, I'm so stressed. I've been, struggling lately, just financially, just like never feel like you have enough. And we have debt here and there. Like, that can consume my mind. And it's like, is that coming above, like, my time with the Lord or my peace or my joy or just like who I am as a wife and a mom? Like, is that like what's taking up my thought life? And I think when you talk about that, like you don't need to spend every waking minute with me for me to be a priority, but like it's also reflected in our thoughts, like what am I idolizing? What is number 1 on my mind? And typically that's very telling as to like what your priorities are. Like, what am I thinking about most often? And because you got to go to work, you got to do what you got to do, but that doesn't mean that work has to be everything and take up your thoughts and all that kind of stuff. And I will say the last thing, just to encourage whoever, like when it comes to love languages and figuring them out and taking action, all that kind of stuff, the whole, like, if I tell him that I want flowers, like it just won't mean as much because is just garbage. So try to get rid of that mindset and just appreciate the fact that, like, number 1, they're never going to know, your wife or your girlfriend or your husband or boyfriend or whatever is not going to know unless you communicate in the first place. Like, you have to learn each other. There's no book that you can read that's going to, like, I can read all the relationship books in the world, but none of them are going to equate to Seth. Like, those are all helpful but I still need to communicate with him because he's a unique individual with unique desires and needs and wants and what he prefers and how he feels loved and all that kind of stuff. So like, it's so important to not feel like you're just dumbing things down. If I'm like, oh, I am so, Seth knows I love coffee. I love when you bring me coffee. I love flowers. I love when you bring them home. When I shift my mindset to know that like, yeah, even though I've communicated with him that I love that, number one, I don't have to anymore because he knows that and he loves me and knows me. But like, it still takes effort and intentionality for him to do those things. It's not like he's just like, oh, great, got the flowers. It's like he had to pick those flowers out and stop at that, flower station and pick a color and all that kind of stuff. And like to write me a little note, like he still sat down with a pen and set aside time to do that. And words of affirmation, it comes so naturally to me and it can still take effort. Like there's times where I'm like, man, the kids are like destroying the kitchen, but I'm sitting here writing this letter. Like that still takes effort and intentionality. So don't feel like, the whole schedule part that we're talking about and all that has to take away from the act of it, because it will become more natural. But that is the reality of like love and effort. It's like, I am doing these things because you love them. And it might not be the most natural thing to me, but it still takes effort and thought. So like, don't allow it to be less valuable because you've communicated it, feel free and confident in communicating like the things that you love, and don't just feel like you only got me these because I told you I liked it, like appreciate it, if that makes sense.
Well, that's a great point. And I think even on the other side of that, the guys or, the other spouse, like also being intentional with asking the question of like, hey,
totally.
Like I know that you like gifts, or what kind of gifts do you like? Like there is a learning process to all these things, and these things they're not always going to be the same. So there's a quote out there that you're a different person every 10 years because we're changing and evolving, just in our knowledge and stuff like that. So like the person that you married yesterday isn't going to be the same person tomorrow, and it's a learning process. I honestly think even of like sex, because we've talked about scheduling sex and kind of the same concept of like, oh, if I'm scheduling sex, it's not like this intimate act, as it's more of like a obligation or a duty because it's on the schedule now. And that's a very valid feeling. Yeah. But it's like the purpose behind it is to, one, it's an important thing. And so you're prioritizing it. And then two, like even in sex, it's like, okay, how can I please you? Like
how can we spice this up?
Like learning their love language within that realm. And so,
and you're not always going to have to stay. I feel like a lot of these concepts are like, they start with a schedule, but Seth and I don't write it down anymore. We used to, but we don't have to anymore, because it's just like mentally in our minds. Like it doesn't have to stay in that monotonous. Yeah. It just becomes a part of your relationship, and it is what it is. And, it doesn't have to feel so like, oh man, that sounds so rigid and terrible. And like, you're only doing this because I told you, or like, you don't even want to have sex with me. It's just because you wrote it down. That honestly might be the case in the beginning. That's just the way that it is. But like, it doesn't have to stay that way, and it won't stay that way if you're consistent with it. Like, but in order to build a habit, just like working out or eating clean, it's like at the beginning, of course, it's not super fun. And that's not with scheduling sex or love languages. Like, it was never not fun for us, but it definitely felt more like maybe awkward or like a to-do or something like that. But it definitely moves out of that phase and just becomes like a natural, enjoyable, free, not at all schedule feeling thing. And I think that's like the greatest misconception of like, okay, write it down and remind myself to do this and set a timer and all this kind of stuff. It's like, that might be the thing necessary to help you create the habit, but it'll become, what is it called? A duty into a delight. Like, might be a duty at first, but it will then become a delight. So yeah, that's our challenge to you guys.
And yes, if you guys are tracking with this conversation, how you're supposed to buy someone a gift every day, that's not what I'm saying.
But yeah, no.
It's not.
It doesn't have to be a bought gift. To be,
what's like that, but it's not. It's also like, and that's where I think scheduling it is the best way to do it, because, you know, trying to like I would say trying to hit every love language every single day is a short term, like, and I actually was thinking about this over Mother's Day. I really want to try to do a better job of prioritizing those moments, and I feel like I lack that quality where it's like I'm the late person to the party for life events like Mother's Day. It's like the day before Mother's Day, and
he's like, I gotta slip out.
What are we doing for Mother's Day? I gotta go run some errands, and it's just like the obvious, like, okay, like clearly Seth's going to get something for Mother's Day. And so just I want to improve on that personally, not to say that's bad.
And not to say that does, you know, it was still so special. There's nothing.
Right. But it's just like that's an area that I want to improve in. So around Mother's Day, it's just like, man, even if I, you know, knowing that like a birthday, Jackie's birthday, maybe I want to make her feel extra special. So for the week around her birthday, I'm just, I don't know. This is fresh off the dome here, but like maybe 5 love languages for a week. I have 35 touches. I'm relating this to real estate now for marketing. 35 touches that I'm trying to sell Jackie that I love her so much. And I'm hitting all these buckets, and it's just like, I don't know, you can kind of make it fun.
Love overload. What happens after that week? My gosh. Well, or another idea is to like really hone in on one a day in a week. It's 5 days in a week.
Well,
that could be good. That could be fun.
And that's where I think a schedule is probably the best way to do it, because if you have 5 love languages, but one of them is priority and one is least priority, they're still all important. But in a, you know, some people say it takes 21 days to build a habit. A book that I read proved that it actually, on average, it's 66 days through like some extensive studies. 66 days to actually like build a habit. So let's say 3 months essentially, or I'm sorry, 66, a little over 2 months. So like if you were to do something for a little over 2 months, then your body has become like so accustomed to doing that thing that it's now like, okay, this is what I normally do. So like if you were able to plan out even 2 months in a calendar and prioritize, so for Jackie, words of affirmation, in a week, I'm trying to hit words of affirmation for her maybe 3 days in a week. Yeah. And then
like whatever you want to start with.
Yeah, and like words of affirmation is priority, so that's going to have the most days. And then if, you know, acts of service is her least, then maybe I have one activity of acts of service in that week or in the 2 week span, like however you break it out. Yeah. And so charting it out kind of like that over a couple months. Like, again, this is just as we're thinking about this, that seems like a very practical way of kind of coming up with a plan to build this habit of, okay, I'm constantly thinking about how do I love Jackie and loving her well. I've established this system now to put it in practice, and I'm being proactive with it because I'm putting it on the calendar, and maybe I'm going as far as to say, okay, I have 3 acts of service this week, and this is going to be clean the dishes, this is going to be wash the car, and this is going to be whatever. So like you can really be intentional with that. Yeah. What was there was something I was looking up though. Oh, something it was a thought that I was thinking about. I don't know if I should share this.
Share it.
It's the idea of like habits the practice of habits becoming habitual. And I was thinking about it from like an athlete's standpoint. And basically I said true athletes or even leaders are those who can play the game from the broadest overall perspective. That is, they can play the game so far removed from the fundamentals that their primary focus is only on that which is most important to becoming victorious. This doesn't make the fundamentals irrelevant. On the contrary, it makes them that much more important, such that they have been so relevant that they are now mastered and simply second nature.
Interesting.
And so that, as we're talking about this, that same concept, applying that to like loving your wife well.
Yeah.
Like if we can build these habits of constantly feeding their love nature, feeding their love languages to a point that it becomes like that second nature, like that to me is the goal.
It's like who you are. You just love your spouse so well, and in all these different ways that are creative and crazy and fun and special and different and unique, because you've mastered like what it means to even love them in the first place, and just those habits. That makes sense.
We're in like the groundbreaking stages of, okay, I'm trying to build this habit. Yeah. But ultimately, I want this just to become part of who I am, and part of how I love Jackie is just because, like, I know what she wants, and I do these things, and I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I like that. It was a good.
For what it's worth.
A good point. Thank you guys for listening.
Yes, thank you.
Let us know if you end up doing this.
Yeah, we'll have to do a follow-up too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, we're do this with
absolutely
you
going to
in the process of it. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Brush up on our love language ourselves. So yes, but thank you for listening. We appreciate you guys so much. As always, it's so helpful when you leave a review. Just helps get this out there, and we just appreciate every single one of you. So thank you.
Again, I'm Seth.
And I'm Jackie.
This is Never TMI, and we are signing off.
Peace out.